Rick Wilson.
Hey, Molly, how are you?
So Tucker Carlson believes that he is going to. He says that he is being that I'm just going to read the text above
Sure.
the
Just
tweet
because it
because
does
it's
need somebody to read it so you hear how
yes.
astounding
When
it
you
is.
this is just what he tweeted, and then we can talk about what he said, but I think this is worthy. When you discover the CIA has been reading your texts in order to frame you for a crime,
Sure.
is the first part of the story. But basically, in a clip shared Saturday evening, as one does, Tucker Carlson says the CIA is preparing some kind of criminal referral against him to the Justice Department, quote, on the basis of a supposed crime. The former Fox News host claimed investigators had read his text messages and that the supposed probe relates to talking to people in Iran before the war. The crime is a consideration, apparently, that would be under the Foreign Agent Act or something like that, acting as
Farah.
an agent of a foreign
Yep.
power, he said.
Foreign Agents Registration Act is what it's called. I just like to ask Tucker, is the CIA in the room with us now, Tucker? Are they telling you to hurt yourself or others?
So so there are questions here, right? Like this is one of these stories where it's self-reported. So
Yep.
that could mean any number of
Tucker is our
things.
only source on this story, to be fair.
Right. A single source story. Uh, Also, how he knows they've read his texts.
Once again, I don't know if the CIA is telling him these things, or what, but he has a fairly pro-Iran position when it comes to
Yes.
this war, I
Well,
would say, and I don't wanna say I'm not saying he's cheerleading for the mullahs to nuke America, but he
yeah,
certainly is anti-Trump's war in Iran, which,
right.
weirdly, for the first time in, I don't know, a decade, puts Tucker and I sort of on the same
Yeah, I
general
too
path, and
am
it
cannot.
feels weird
Yeah,
and it feels kind of dirty, and I don't feel good
yeah,
about it, um, but Molly, I mean, I think what you've got here is there are a handful of these people, Tucker, Jackson Hinkle, sometimes Alex Jones, some of these weirdos who get in bed with with foreign countries. Doug McGregor,
right.
these people who seem to suddenly have mysterious access to our enemies to
Yeah.
describe their intentions, and to describe their side of these arguments over and over again. And I think it is entirely possible that Tucker has talked to these people. I don't know. We don't know. We don't know what this entails yet, but it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I mean,
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, we've definitely seen members of conservative media make money from foreign countries. You'll remember that
oh,
thing. Who
Benny
was it?
Johnson, Tim
Benny.
Pool,
Right.
Lauren Southern.
Didn't
Um,
the husband of Meghan McCain, Ben Dominic, make
that was
money?
the Malaysia deal. Malaysia or Indonesia. Prime
Right.
River Propecia. I just threw a Zoolander reference there. I think it was Malaysia. Like suddenly back in the 2000s, a bunch of right wing bloggers were like, writing about what a great country Malaysia was and
And
how
you were
the
like,
administration was
yeah,
so awesome. So look, being caught up in the Farah stuff is a rookie mistake.
right.
Um, and a lot of these guys who do politics in other countries, as I have done, um, if you're just working in the other country, you don't have to register for Farah. But if
Right.
you're becoming an advocate for them in this country, you do.
Right. And this was
Um,
something we saw Trump's guy got involved in, what's his name? The campaign manager in the first Trump 1.0.
oh, Brad Parscale,
And
um,
all yeah,
and
Brad, but also remember the guy where they had to sell his ostrich jacket? Paul
oh yeah, Paul
Manafort.
Manafort.
Paul
Yeah, of
Manafort.
course. Well,
I love that I remember the jacket and not the name.
Paul Manafort is a full-time Paul Manafort is like a literary character almost in this
Right,
country.
right.
He is a guy who if it's the scummiest, most dangerous, most anti-American, most vile, most repressive regime in the world, and they walk through Paul's office with a dollar bill hanging out of their back pocket, he's going to work for him. He literally works for Lukashenko. He works for Orban,
Right.
as do a bunch of other Trump senior advisors right now. By the way, they're all trying to get Orban elected, and I'm sure as we go back to Tucker, Tucker is also a huge fan of Orban.
Right.
Who's going to
Right.
lose, by the way?
So here's a question I think. I think we should parse this out because there's so many issues here. There's the possibility that Tucker is acting as a foreign agent. But then
Sure,
there's the other possibility that they're going after media figures that they don't like,
absolutely correct.
which we saw with Don Lemon.
I think there's a massive overlap between um, left and right people that Trump has is going after or has directed his people to go after, and I don't think it's happening in equal intensity and sequence for all of them.
Right.
But when you've got Judge Box of Wine out on Friday screeching like a stuck hog
Yeah,
about
what
Jerome
was that?
Powell,
What
well,
was she doing
it was that the
there?
court slapped her down so hard she lost her dentures. I mean, Jerome Powell was essentially the court said this administration is harassing Jerome Powell. They have to fucking stop. And Judge Box of Wine has misread her role, powers, and responsibilities. Um,
Oh,
but they're going to go after people they don't like. You saw Brendan
right.
Carr over the weekend saying, "Oh well, we're going to go after networks that don't cover the war like we want them to cover it."
Yeah.
Well, that ain't how this
Yeah.
shit works, boss. But here
Yeah.
we are.
So there's just a number of different possible bad results here, I think. You
Huge.
know,
And look, here's the thing. I think Tucker Carlson is a guy who has submerged himself into the most vile parts of the alt-right, white replacement bullshit world. But honestly, I don't want this administration using the power of the government to silence speech that they don't like, because
right.
that doesn't stop with Tucker. It ends
No,
with you and me. It
for
ends with a whole
sure.
bunch of other people. And you have seen this repeatedly across the spectrum. Trump saying that he's going to sue people like Maggie Haberman this week. He went after Maggie again because that's a love hate kind of thing that he's
Right.
got in his head for years. Calling her maggot, saying he's going to sue her for defamation. And you've got Pete Hegseth not wanting to be covered by the press because he doesn't think they make him look good enough in his photographs. This is
Mhm.
an administration, and you got Brendan Carr threatening networks that don't cover stories the way they want them covered. This is an administration that has a very thin skin,
Yeah.
and so it wouldn't shock me if they tried to make an example out of Tucker.
Right. And then I think the other point here is that Tucker is a real adversary of Trump, right? He pushes at Trump. He
He
would like
does.
to be
He
the heir
does.
apparent to Trump. Discuss.
Tucker represents the future of the GOP MAGA movement. And a lot of people go, "Oh no, that's impossible. It's got to be Trump or some Trump designee or it's going to be Marco." Or I disagree. I think that Tucker Carlson has a resonance with the growing number of 18 to 40-year-old Republican men who have grown up in the Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson podcast verse,
Right.
who are into this alt-right thing, whether they say it that way or not. Some of them, and they range from I don't like women telling me what to do, I hate the woke,
Right.
to that Hitler wasn't such a bad fellow.
Yeah.
And I think Tucker has a lot of power with those people. And I think if he does decide to run for president, um, it would be a threat. It would be something in a primary that would drive the rest of the MAGA GOP further to the right. I don't
Yeah.
even want to say right anymore. It's just like sane versus insane, but further
Right.
crazy.
Right.
Um, and I think it would be in some ways like 2015 and 16. You had a flock of respectable Republican candidates who were all very talented at what they were doing. A lot of smart guys in that list. And Trump came in as the big disruptor and blew them all away. I think
Right.
you could end up, oh, there's JD Vance. Oh, there's Josh Hawley. Oh, there's Marco Rubio. Oh, there's Ted Cruz. And you could end up with a Tucker coming in and saying, here's a grenade and stepping out of the room. You know, I th-
Except Doesn't Tucker and JD Vance pull from the same group, really?
I think JD Vance is a declining stock right now.
Let's talk about JD Vance. That's a wonderful, wonderful thought. Let's talk about JD Vance and the war in Iran because it feels like he will defend anything. He will defend like 40-year-olds doing a Nazi group chat, but he seems like he's not defending this.
That we've seen 2 stories leak now, that Vance had different views on the conduct of the war from the
He,
beginning,
he had
and it's the least
misgivings.
subtle shit you've ever seen,
Right,
okay? And it goes back to a rule that Karl Rove said one time way back in the day, and it was that bad White Houses just leak.
right,
Good White Houses leak on purpose.
right.
JD Vance is in a bad White House. It's leaking crazily. Everybody's trying to get daylight, including the Joint Chiefs of Staff, including the professional military commanders in the theater. Everybody's trying to get daylight on Trump and Hegseth right now, and Rubio. And even Rubio is trying to get some daylight on all this stuff because he's trying to change the subject to Cuba and move on
Right.
from Iran,
Right.
which ain't gonna happen.
Yeah,
Um,
that was
so
amazing.
I think you're in a weird box right now where Vance recognizes that a big part of his potential coalition in 2028 are isolationist, or they are in that weird Eldridge Colby pro China thing.
Right.
I I don't know how you square that freaking circle.
Right.
Um, and so I think that there's a weird Vancian headspace that he's got. Like, I can talk my way out of this. I can pretend I was the smart guy and the sane guy in the room and let Trump take the beating on this in the future. I can
He
say,
cannot.
I can use this. He's also thinking I can use this to cockblock Hegseth and Marco from future
Right.
power on foreign policy matters.
Yes. I
This is
don't
not a
think
team
he
of rivals,
can.
people. This is a
No,
team
no.
of wild, rabid weasels in a garbage can fighting to the death.
Speaking of which, I would love to talk about why this crew is such a disaster. Because, like, people are waiting for the oil markets to
Oh, good luck.
open. Yes, there's been this weekend, there was like $200 a barrel oil batted around. The
It's going
Straits of
great.
Hormuz are basically ostensibly closed unless
Uh-huh.
you're Chinese
Iranian
a
or
Chinese
Chinese,
ship. Yeah.
they're doing
Uh
fine.
yeah. So it does strike me, and Trump's big solution was to end sanctions on Russian oil. And I
And
actually
by the way,
saw
I don't know if Russia exists right now,
I,
because in the streets of Moscow,
right.
there's no internet. And apparently, before we came on the show, I saw something in the Financial Times. Like, there have been troops deployed now in Moscow in the ring road areas.
Wait,
So something is
why?
cooking, and it's probably not good.
I my favorite part of this whole story, I'm telling you, is that I watched a Goldman Sachs analyst like melt down about the
Oh,
oil situation.
I saw him the other day, and I
Yeah.
gotta tell you, I asked somebody about him. I'm like, "Is this guy, like, legit?" He goes, "Oh, no, no. That guy's probably the most knowledgeable person in the world
And
about oil markets and
And
oil
he was like,
futures."
"You can only do 2,000,000 barrels a day." You
Yeah.
you see him just, like, sweat it's
It's like
so
the math of it is so fucking brutal.
right. He said it's gonna take 200 days to get back online. And
That's just around election time, Molly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it just I
And
could
the
just
American
see
people love nothing more than paying their Trump gas tax.
yeah, a summer filled with $6, $7 gasoline. People are gonna it's actually gonna be like being in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, and those summer plane rides that y'all were thinking about taking, those tickets that are $1,000 now are gonna be 3,500.
Yeah. It's just an incredible, incredible way to run a country. And the
All
mo
this crap, Molly, about, like, "Oh, we're gonna find ways to bring the oil price down. We're gonna talk to the producers here in America. We're gonna make them do this, make them do that." I'm like, "Okay, that's all fine and good. Congrats, but did you ever think that you might wanna not start a war that you didn't have a plan to keep the straits open with?
what
Would that
about
would that have been
price?
would that have been
Imagine
something?"
But
Who
imagine
knows?
if Harris had been like, we're going to have price controls on oil. Like, we're not going to go for this
They
capitalism
would have
thing.
screamed, "It's full communism,"
Right.
blah, blah, blah,
I
blah.
mean, but I also think the reporting this weekend, 3 weeks into the war, that nobody knows why we're fighting. My favorite part of the story is like they had no plans for the straits, and everyone said, "You're going to have this problem with the Straits of Hormuz." Everyone,
Everyone.
everyone, anyone who's ever read The Economist said this, and then they had no plan.
I can tell you something I know from experience. You can look from UAE across the strait on a clear day, and it's often hazy, but you can see across it. That is not an area that you easily that you have a lot of running room, um, because the only thing that it takes to put one of those $500 sea mines that can blow up $1 billion ship is some asshole on a jet ski or a speedboat runs out and
Mm.
dumps it in the water. And believe me, they're gonna have a lot of assholes willing to go out and dump mines in the strait because that is Iran's power now. Now, of
Yeah.
course, we've also got a marine unit going from Asia over there, and in 9 days from now they will arrive. And apparently, Trump wants them to take over Karg Island, which
Explain
is,
Karg
as I call it,
Island.
hot Greenland.
Okay,
Okay,
so explain.
it is the main oil terminal for Iran. It's in the northern Persian Gulf. It is about 10,000 people live there. I've flown over it before. Um, it's a big oil tank facility. They pipe oil out to it to these big storage units, big storage drums, and then that gets loaded onto tankers. The tankers then move from there. Like 90% of Iran's oil goes through Karg Island. That's their central oil terminal. It would
Right,
be like um, Houston for us. Okay.
right, right,
Um, it's very important. Trump, it seems to think he's going to take it and then make Iran surrender, I guess. I think this is a recipe for 2,000 Marines to get trapped on an island and get murdered by
mm.
cruise missiles. Because if you're telling Iran we're going to destroy your regime, or unless you surrender, we'll destroy your oil terminal, they'd be like, oh, you're going to kill us anyway, so why not?
Yeah,
They love death more than we love life.
and that gets us to the real worry that I think everyone has here is, does this become a ground war?
Look, Molly, if it does become a ground war, and I said this from the beginning, I said this the first time we talked about this, Iran cannot beat us in the air, and they cannot beat us on the sea, but that we can't beat them on the ground.
Yeah, because it's a humongous country filled with
90 million
people.
people in a country the size of Texas, folks.
Yeah,
It is it is going to make Afghanistan look like a cakewalk.
yeah,
And remember, in Iran, they are the religious fanaticism of the regime is built into the culture top to bottom. Not
right,
everybody wants to live in that world, but millions and millions and millions of imagine if you went to if somebody invaded America and they're like, "We love everybody except the MAGA voters." What do you think the MAGA voters would do? They would fight
right,
like tooth and nail to survive.
yeah,
And the Iranian version of MAGA are the mullahs and
yeah,
the terrorists, and they are going to fight like hell to survive. They're going to do whatever they can, and as military planners always say, they get a vote.
yeah,
So
and it is.
a
I
ground war
mean,
is a bad, 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 super bad, 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 bad idea. And I'm saying this.
yeah. No, I know. Well, I mean, the best moment of the whole weekend is John Bolton being like, "Whoa."
Right? Right?
Like, is all he's ever wanted was this. He was paid by the Shah's people.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, I don't know,
It's like, maybe we
guys."
ought to walk this one a little slower there, Chief. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes, and I've known John for a very long time, and I've known about this. I've known that this has been an aspirational goal for a very long time. But and then look again. I want to say this one more time. I feel like I feel stupid having to say it. No one's being an apologist for the Iranian regime. Nobody
No,
wants the mullahs to be like in charge of people and hang gay people from cranes
no.
and make women wear burqas. Nobody wants that. But the alternative is not free and democratic Iran. the alternative is Trump's trying to make a deal to make them give him a cut of their oil rev,
Right.
and then he'll declare victory and go away.
Yeah. And I think it's important to just point out as we are almost done, but that no one that what they did in Venezuela was not free the Venezuelans. What they
No,
did was put the vice president in charge.
if you read that Times piece, it was a Chevron executive who came up with the plan.
Yeah.
Instead of going to the pro-democratic side, the Chevron executive came up with a plan because they knew they could make a deal with Delcy Rodriguez and the Maduro regime, which is still in charge of Venezuela.
But the good news is that Donald Trump did in fact get that peace prize.
The FIFA Peace Prize is a highly desirable peace prize. Next year, it's probably going to have to be like the Chick-fil-A Peace Prize because even FIFA can't stand this level of embarrassment.
Well, we'll see. Rick Wilson.